Okay, everybody, welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to the podcast. Either way, if you're listening or watching, welcome back. I'm so excited to have one of my best friends, who's my maid of honor, just one of my dear, I consider her like a sister to me. We've grown up together, Kelsey Zimmerman. She is a Christian. She's a mom, a new mom of a 4-month-old son, Noah. Who our kids are going to be best friends someday, hopefully, just like we were, and a wife as well, and also a alcohol counselor. And I have invited her on to this interview today because number one, she inspires me so much. And that's kind of what this series is about, is women who inspire me and hopefully inspire other people as well. So I've invited her on to this video today to share a little bit about her story with how she became a drug and alcohol counselor, as well as how she came to a relationship with Christ. So Kelsey, welcome to the channel.
Thanks, Maddie. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll just kind of get started. I know we're both moms, so we have limited time here. So I'm just going to dive right in. If you would you tell us just a little bit about your background and kind of your story with coming to relationship with Jesus, as well as how drug and alcohol and addiction, how that came into play.
Sure. Yeah. So, feels weird telling you since, I feel like I'm telling you everything you already know, but maybe you'll hear some stuff that you don't know.
Yeah.
So obviously grew up in the church, what we call kingdom kids. However, I have no idea what that even meant, but I grew up in a Christian foundation home. Parents who really strive to teach me who God was and just the heart and character of God, which really laid a lot of the groundwork for where I'm at today. And honestly, even along in my own personal substance use. Um, but I'll get to that in a second. But I found myself. I was always known as like the curious kid, and kind of a rebel. And in my family, it was for the most part pretty stable. I experienced. I'm trying to be mindful and be respectful. I experienced um, alcoholism with uh, both sides of my family. My mom's parents died of cirrhosis in the liver. My dad's side of the family has struggled with alcoholism. Both my parents have struggled with alcoholism. So that was always around when I was growing up. However, I did see my parents really fight for righteousness and fight for the relationship with God and fight that battle that comes with substance use. Um, my mom was was more in the trenches in my substance use. So I started using when I was about 13 years old. Is kind of when um, I remember my friends and I would steal beers out of her mom's refrigerator or, start smoking cigarettes. And it wasn't really something that was a big part of my life, but I always remember being very intrigued. And like a lot of addicts, it was something that I didn't necessarily seek out, but when I tried it, I realized what a great coping skill it was. And that's a lot of times how it starts with addicts and alcoholics. It's no addict goes in thinking, oh, I think I'm going to be addicted to alcohol and drugs. I think that's what I want to do with my life. It appeared very harmless. And much like the spiritual warfare that we're in, Satan is always trying to tempt us with stuff that seems so appealing. And obviously, I didn't see a lot of the danger. Once I got more into my substance use, I did. But by that time, I realized honestly, how helpful those coping skills were with drugs and alcohol. And I want to say this. I think this is something that I tell my patients. I think it's important for addicts and alcoholics to be honest with themselves around how substances did actually help them for a time. A lot of us, bad traits that we pick up, bad habits, are coping skills that may have helped us for a time, but what I've learned is the ways that I tried to protect myself or figure out my own coping skills, they worked for a time and then they started becoming destructive to my life and people's life around me. So anyway, um, back to I guess my story and my substance use. I remember it starting to pick up and start to escalate in high school, probably around senior year. Um, and really I would run after anything that made me feel good. I was addicted to substances, but also very much addicted to relationships, men, promiscuity, um, anything that made me feel good. And at first I remember that I would always seek out to have fun. And of course, when you're looking for fun and that's your goal in life, what was fun becomes the norm. And so keep going to more and more extremes. And I definitely saw how that just snowballed in my life. Um, so it's hard. So most of the time, if you were to go to an AA meeting or NA and ask someone, what's your drug of choice? Or they'll say, I'm Kelsey, I'm an alcoholic. And some people will share what their drug of choice was alcohol, whatever. Um, I am what, we call in the clinical world a polysubstance user. So I had many drugs of choice. I mean, the one that really had me at its mercy, I described was crystal meth, which it's a really, really addictive drug. And but it ranged from alcohol to heroin to cocaine to crack to um, marijuana to methamphetamines to ketamine. I mean, really everything. Um, I wasn't someone who used like every other day or on the weekends or every week. I was someone that used 24/7, literally all day, every day. If I was awake, then I was high on something. Excuse me. And so, oops, lost my papers. Uh, sorry.
Okay.
But so, anyways, I remember being 20. I think I was 20 years old. No, actually, I'm sorry. I had to have been around 19. And I was walking to my mom's house, and it was probably about 3 blocks away from where I lived. And something was prompting me to just pray to God because I felt so entrenched in my lifestyle and I didn't feel like I could get out of it. I was very aware that I didn't have the strength to get out of it by myself. Which is something that obviously we teach in AA and NA, they talk about a higher power, that you have to, give up your will to God is the terminology that they use in AA. I didn't know that at the time, but that's what I see now that God was really trying to prompt me to do. So 20 years old and 19, I'm sorry, walking to my mom's, and I remember feeling like I could not escape the thought of God. It was not in a scary way, but like I was being tormented by God, and I couldn't get him out of my mind. And my heart, I know, was just really yearning for a relationship with him. Um, by that time, I had already experienced legal trouble, getting arrested, um, a pregnancy with a man who was a very prominent drug dealer here in Oregon, that ended up in a pre-traumatic miscarriage. Uh, so much promiscuity. I didn't even know. I had absolutely no self-worth or self-esteem at all. I thought I did at the time. I mean, I thought I was the bee's knees, but really once I got clean and sober, I realized I had no self-worth. Um, and, working some pretty, what's the word? I worked some jobs that also didn't help build my self-esteem. It really broke it down. And just stuck in this life. I just felt stuck. So for about a year, every single day, I prayed that God would take me out of this lifestyle. Um, I mean, I actually remember it was a night that I had overdosed on heroin. It was, and I mean, all drugs are really bad. There's something particularly dark about heroin. Um, and I had overdosed on heroin. I remember laying on the bed praying for God to take me out of this life. I also remember coming to terms with the fact that I probably wasn't going to wake up. I had mixed heroin and cocaine and alcohol, which is a very lethal drug combination. Um, and it wasn't until I ended up uh, going to our friend Megan Loheed's house. So, for those of you who don't know, Madison and I are really good friends with two sisters, Megan and Jenna Loheed. The older sister, Megan, is close to my age. We're 2 weeks apart, something like that, 19 days. And a lot of our life, we've spent our birthdays together. And this year, I was about to turn 20. My mom had asked me if I wanted to go see Megan for my birthday. And she knows the story, so she won't care if I say this, but that was the last thing I wanted to do. Megan, I envisioned my birthday, getting drunk and being with guys and doing drugs. And Megan, and this is a great thing, has never gotten drunk a day in her life, has never touched drugs before. And that did not sound appealing. I also remember being pretty hungover, so I just wanted to basically continue to drink more. But I ended up going, actually, and she and I were laying in her hammock, and she lived out in Veneta or Elmira, and so the sky clarity is so much better at nighttime. And she and I were laying in the hammock at night, just looking at the stars. And I remember feeling so small, and it was like a little bit of a light switch went on, and reminded me that there's something so much bigger out there than me, that's more powerful than I am, that can take me out of this lifestyle. And it was the first time sobriety ever, I mean, since I started using at 13, ever sounded appealing. It sounded very scary. You know, in my childhood, there's been trauma. Uh, Nothing that I haven't been able to heal from, but there's trauma, and especially when I was using, there's so many self-inflicted wounds that substances have been a coping skill, and the thought of not using them anymore was so daunting. And that's the case for many alcoholics and drug addicts. So fast forward to the next day, I was leaving Megan's house and I was on my way home. Oh, this makes me choked up. I remember looking at my mom, and I asked her, I said, "Mom, what am I doing with my life?" And she was aware. Us addicts and alcoholics think that we're so sly. We try and hide. And actually, I was a lot more forthcoming about my use, and I really didn't care who knew. But there's stuff that I thought people didn't know that they did. So, but my mom was pretty aware. And she looked at me and she said, "Kels, I have no idea what you're doing with your life." I said, I have to change. Like, I have to do something. And so we got home. It had been probably 30 minutes since I saw Megan. And I called her and I asked her if she wanted to go to the beach the next day and just hang out. And I remember hearing in her voice just such excitement. I had since I had started using substances, I had never reached out to her to hang out. And we've all been best friends our whole entire life. So I could tell that meant a lot to her. So we ended up going out to Florence, and God just orchestrated the exact day that He knew that I needed to have. It's like He showed me that there was something so much more appealing about a life with Him and sobriety, obviously, than the life that I was living. So we went to Florence, and we ended up getting Dairy Queen, and it was okay. So you know how Florence, Oregon is. It's super windy. I mean, you basically walk outside, you look like you just, traveled in a convertible for, an hour. Your hair's just everywhere. Well, there's no wind. And so we were able to have a bonfire on the beach, watching the sunset. It was warm. It was during the summertime. And I told her, I said, Megan, I think I want to study the Bible. And her reaction, she said, yep, it's going to be hard. but it, and it was, but I remember, knowing that that was true. But again, it was like that light switch moment where God put this thought in my head. Yeah, but it's possible. Like, you're going to be able to do this. So we ended up studying the Bible. Took a long time. For me, it took, let's see, I started studying the Bible September, October, November, December, January, February, March. February. 6 months of studying the Bible before I ended up getting baptized and becoming a disciple. And as you know, I was clean for about 3 months and was a disciple for about 3 months before I relapsed and I left my relationship with God. A lot of it was for a relationship, for a guy. Met him basically that night and ended up just, doing drugs with him all night long and sleeping with him. And we ended up dating, and I had left God for about 9 months before I realized that this was not what I wanted. And to be honest, I think two things that really happened. One, I realized that the stuff that happened to me when I was younger, that I was a victim of, I was no longer the victim anymore. And I couldn't blame what had happened to me in my life on my substance use. And so that was number one. That had not happened when I first got clean and sober. And that happened in the midst of my use. Number two, I remember watching The Passion of the Christ. And right after, I'm watching this with my boyfriend. We're living together, and I have, my pot plants everywhere and beer bottles everywhere. And I watched that movie, and immediately I thought, I'm like, I can't go back to this lifestyle. Like, I can't go back after I saw what it did to Jesus, what he did for me to be able to live a free life. So I ended up texting Courtney Biaz, who she and her husband were leading the church at the time. And I said, I want to get restored. I want to come back to God. And that was a much shorter process than the first time. It was not easy. But yeah, and let's see, that was 6 years ago, and now here I am. So sorry, I keep hitting myself. There's flies out here.
That's okay. I know. I love the tapestry hanging behind you. It's beautiful.
I feel like I'm in Neverland.
I love it. Well, yeah, thank you so much for sharing your story, Kelsey. I feel like I learned new like little aspects and things that you and Megan did together that I never really, maybe I heard but never really resonated. So I love hearing that. And I know that you had a kind of unique, like you never went to rehab, correct?
Right.
You had sort of a unique experience, like coming out of those addictions, with Megan's mom. So can you kind of tell me a little bit about that, like what you did every day, what she did with you, like what actually changed that was sort of its own rehab in itself? What was that like?
Right. So for one, yes, Renee was a huge piece of it. You were a huge piece. I think the main people in my life both times that I got clean and sober were you, Megan, my mom, Renee, and Courtney Diaz. So you five were really, oh gosh, I just got chills as I said that. You all played an equal part in me getting clean and sober. Now, I think Renee had got the short end of the stick a little bit because she has to deal with me when I'm detoxing, which I know probably wasn't pleasant for her. Megan was living there at the time in their house. I describe it like this. I describe it as she took me hostage and quarantined me, which is a phrase we all can understand right now, but it was not as nice as what we're experiencing right now. I was going through withdrawals from methamphetamine, which is far better than withdrawing from alcohol or benzodiazepines or opioids. But it's not fun because basically, you know, on crystal meth, you're up. I mean, I would be up for 5 days at a time, not sleeping. So I was exhausted, so tired. I mean, you literally will just sleep all day long for days, get up, go to the bathroom, go back to bed. I mean, you don't eat anything. Um, she didn't allow me to do that because neither of us knew like how to treat amphetamine withdrawal, you know. Um, I was too, for one, I changed my phone number. So that's like the biggest thing for anyone who wants to get clean and sober. You have to be willing to do whatever it takes and make radical choices and radical decisions to change your life. For me, changing my number, that was huge. All my old contacts, all the old people, my old hookups and whatnot, gone. No one remembers people's phone numbers anymore, so that didn't matter. I didn't have them. Um, so I was expected to wake up when she woke up. I would eat when she would eat. We were to pull weeds almost all day long in her garden. And I basically had to, and I went to bed when she went to bed, and I had to be by her side constantly. And it was exactly what I needed because, you know, before I was living this life of no structure, and she taught me how to have structure. I had never woken up at 6 a.m. unless it was to keep drinking or, you know, unless I'd already been up and just hadn't gone to bed. So that was very new. And, you know, and obviously she'd teach me so much in between those times. We'd have our quiet times together, read the Bible. She is so wise, and she would just talk with me. I think, I mean, she was like a live-in therapist, I felt like. So, but yeah, I think one of the biggest things that helped was just having that structure.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that. Such a unique thing. I always look back on that.
Yeah. I don't think any of us really knew about, I mean, obviously we knew that there's
Yeah,
such a thing as rehab, but like we didn't know the number for a rehab, or, you know, not many of us knew anything about AA or NA or anything like that.
yeah, yeah, it's true. I think that time will be like very ingrained in my mind forever, and just like watching her walk with you. And yeah, she's an amazing woman. So if you're
Yeah.
watching this, Renee, we love you. You're amazing.
We love you, Renee.
Yeah. So, you said that there was a point after you became a Christian where you went back to drugs and alcohol. And then you got clean again, kind of came back to Christ and went through that process again. Um, what has kept you from relapsing into that lifestyle since that time?
Oh, my biggest contributor to my recovery is obviously God. And not just God, but having a relationship with him where I read the Bible and live by it. That's kept me clean and sober. And I love the book. Did you ever read Redeeming Love, or did you start
Yes,
it? Okay.
I did. I read it again this year, right before I gave birth.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So the book of Hosea really just did something to me internally, and just connected me with God on the level that I was really yearning for. So the whole point that God of what God wants to do in our lives is fill those holes that we keep trying to run after other things. So you don't have to
Mhm.
be an addict or alcoholic to fill that space with something else, whether it's exercise, overeating, food restriction, work, being a perfectionism or being a perfectionist, whatever. I mean,
Mhm.
Netflix, anything. Constantly trying to be filled, and obviously God's the only one that can fill that. And for me, being desired by a man and looking to have belonging by a man was one of the biggest holes that I kept trying to fill. And so the book of Hosea really just showed such a poetic, vulnerable, romantic side of God, how he loves us so much and continues to seek after us even when we're in our ugliest. I mean, looking back when I first became a Christian, I had scabs all over my face from picking from methamphetamine use. I was so emaciated, so just skinny, and my skin was dull, my hair was brittle, and I looked dingy, man. I mean, I looked like a ghost or a skeleton. Um, and I thinking that God wanted me like that. He wanted me, it didn't matter what I looked like. It didn't matter that I cussed like a saint. I mean, obviously that does if you want to have a relationship with God. He wants us to live righteously. But he wanted me at my worst. And
Mm.
I always felt like I had to perform for these men and be who they wanted me to be. But God wanted me exactly how he designed me. And so being so confident in that acceptance from God was one of the most healing things that continues to keep me sober.
Mm. I love that. I love that so much, Kels.
Mm.
Now, I feel like it's funny. Our families are so close. My mom is like one of your close friends. Your mom is
Yeah.
like one of my best friends. um, I love our dynamic. So,
Mhm.
and obviously, she watched you go through this for many years. Um, what what do you wish that more people understood about addiction?
Mm. Gosh, there's a few things. There's a lot. Um, I think the number one thing is to remember that their substance use, their behaviors while they're using, that's all a symptom of something much deeper. It is really hard to have a conversation with someone who's in a meth psychosis. Most people just turn their backs and walk away from them. And sometimes it can be dangerous, they're not in their right mind. It can be difficult to have a conversation with someone who's withdrawing from alcohol and really irritable and sick and shaky and or heroin, opioid withdrawals where their nose are runny and they're yawning and you're like, what the heck is going on with you? But remembering that they're really suffering and they need love and connection.
Mm.
I think that connection is one of the most healing things for anything. The whole world needs connection, and it's starving for connection.
Right.
For one with God, and for two with one another. That's the biggest thing.
Mm.
When you see these people that are crass, that um, you know you can tell haven't had structure in their life, the majority of them have lives that would probably make you sick to your stomach if you heard. I
Mm.
can't tell you how many people, not even just being a counselor, but my old friends where it was so it was so common to have friends whose father sexually abused them, whose mother sexually abused them, who their parents died. Their parents would even sell them for drugs and alcohol. I mean, these stories that are so heinous and so sad. Um, I had friends who would have parents that gave them drugs at 5 years old, giving a 5-year-old methamphetamines. And I this might be contrary to popular belief, and I will say it unapologetically. I don't blame someone for being addicted to drugs when you have no choice but to be addicted to them when you're younger. So many people have not been taught the skills, and a
Mm.
lot of people are not willing to be patient with them and teach them those skills and walk with them through their suffering and their pain. The last thing that an addict or an alcoholic needs is to be isolated. And the fact that this world really turns their back, a lot of times out of uncomfortability or just not knowing what to do, so we choose to do nothing. That's the last thing that they need. They've been ostracized and isolated so long. Um, even if you were to go, see a homeless person, you didn't have any money, maybe carry around a card that has information for drug and alcohol treatment centers or AA
Mm.
meetings for them. Anyone is welcome at drug and alcohol, at AA or NA, if they have a desire to stop using. That's the only requirement, is a desire to stop using.
Mm.
Um, so there's lots of resources. We are more than capable of helping them and have those resources. It's a matter of if we're willing to or not. So
Mm.
that's probably one of the biggest things that I'd say
Yeah.
people who don't struggle with substances should know.
Yeah. Now, I remember one of the things that your mom used to pray that still like haunts me a lot, was that she told me once that she would pray like, God, do whatever it takes to bring my child to a relationship with you. And that's different for every child. But that was in the midst of, a lot of hardship, and that was in the middle of darkness, in the family. And so obviously she saw you go through that. She felt that pain as a family member. And I know you work, obviously, with people who struggle with addiction, as well as, I assume, kind of their family members coming to visit and whatnot in the facility. So what do you tell family members of addicts? I know I was sharing with you, I saw this film recently called Beautiful Boy, that came out recently, and it's about kind of the family's perspective watching your child go through addiction and feeling helpless and not knowing what to do and struggling with, how do I help, what do I do, what's, so much. So what do you tell parents, if parents who may be listening to this right now with a child who has an addiction, or a family member, let's say it's a brother or sister even, what would you tell those family members?
Um, if there's silence and you're not talking about it, start talking about it. It
Mm.
can be really uncomfortable and scary to confront something like that. I think, you know, I see a lot with parents, ignorance is bliss. So the more they don't know, the easier it is for them. But you're risking your child's life or your loved one's life by not talking about it.
Mm.
You're going to get probably a harsh reaction. You're going to get a lot of denial, most likely. If it's getting so bad to the point where you're having to confront them, then obviously they're not in a great space. You're going to get a lot of denial. You're going to get um, irritability, or they might lash out at you. Um, but it's worth it. Uh, Ask them questions. The number two is boundaries. Oh my gosh, boundaries is what helped me get clean and sober. And
Mm.
more so boundaries with my mom. She was very, very great about setting some great boundaries. So one thing about boundaries is it's something that is not set in the heat of the moment. So it's not when, you're in this huge crisis or conflict and you're just shouting out these boundaries. That's not going to work. It's
Mm.
something that you've put good thought into, something that is attainable, that you can actually follow through with. Uh, and it's something that they are very clear on what your boundary is. So, for example, I was not allowed to come to my mom's house if I was under the influence. I was not allowed to live at her house. I mean, I wasn't even allowed to live at her house until I was, ready to be clean and sober. And when I did get clean and sober,
Mhm.
and at the time I was living in a tent. So for my mom, her boundary was you're going to keep living in a tent on the street until you get clean and sober. But part of her boundary was, I couldn't live there, but she always reached out to me. If I
Mhm.
wanted to hang out, she would drop her plans in a heartbeat and,
Mhm.
hang out, spend time with me. She never gave me money. Don't ever give an addict or alcoholic money. You're just enabling them. Um, no matter what they say it's for, gas, they need it for rent. No, they don't. Chances are they're probably using it on stuff. Or find a way to pay, if they're asking for, for rent or for gas, pay it yourself. I remember your mom one time actually saw me at a gas station randomly, and I did really need gas. It was when I was really deep in my addiction.
I was
And
there,
we
I
were at
remember that.
yes, and
Yeah.
she goes, "Well, I'll put gas in your tank," which was great. That actually was what we would have spent the money
Yeah.
on. Um, but the last piece about a good boundary is that it has a consequence, and it has to be something you follow through with. Us addicts and alcoholics are master manipulators, and we will call your bluff. So if it's not something you follow through with and you go back on your word, then you might as well just not make boundaries according to your goal and you
Mm.
follow through with them.
Mm. Yeah, that's really powerful. I love that. Now, there's this term that I heard recently called compassion fatigue. And I'm curious, as
Mhm.
somebody who walks with people so much, and who is, I mean, you're in people's darkness with them, in their addiction with them, walking them through that. Um, how do you protect your own, like, mental health and emotional health while still working with people? How do you step out of that? How do you create your own emotional boundaries, things like that? How do you protect your mental and emotional health being a drug and alcohol counselor? Because I know you and I know how full of compassion you are. So I'm so curious.
Yeah, that's a great question. This was actually a topic of discussion a couple days ago at work. And the last thing you want to have as a counselor is compassion fatigue. It happens. Um, but there's a few things that go into helping you not get to that place. For one is having boundaries with the patient. For me, it was a rocky road figuring out what those boundaries were because I had to figure out what I was capable of. And obviously, as a new mom, I'm capable of a lot
Mhm.
less. I don't sleep a lot. I have, a lot going on the outside. So knowing what my boundaries are with my patients, I work with, I have an all women's group, and I get a lot of women that struggle with borderline personality, severe PTSD, mental health challenges, and a lot of people, in the treatment community, go there. Not oftentimes, it's not just substance use, um, and so I have to really have firm boundaries with my patients. And um, uh, I mean, God actually is definitely number one. So being able to have time where I'm able to pray, that's my self care. Going on prayer walks, reading, getting into the Word, and just being able to get grounded again. Um, Time with friends and family. I'm actually pretty good about leaving work at work. Yesterday,
Mhm.
I was not. I actually called my supervisor and had a meltdown. It was a really hard day. I had some pretty intense groups, and um, I called my supervisor and I was just bawling my eyes out. And
Mhm.
I he reminded me of that, and so I just had to go to the lake and clear my mind. And just doing things that I love on my time off, allowing other people to help fill me up too. Because I could give, and give, but I get energized by actually being around people. And so, as much as sometimes I think that I don't, actually, yesterday it was really funny because I went to the lake and I'm like, I just got to get away. I need time by myself. I was there for 10 minutes before I called my husband and asked if he wanted to meet me there, and then went and hung out with my mom and my sister. I'm just hardwired to be around people. That's actually what like gives me energy.
Mhm.
So yeah, figuring out what you love in life and doing it.
I love that. What are some helpful resources that you would share? Maybe it's scripture, maybe it's a book, just for people who want to gain a better understanding about addiction or about mental health, um, or people who are in it themselves who are seeking help.
Yeah, I actually wrote them down, and maybe you could put it in like the
Yeah,
link or something like that.
yeah.
Um, because there's so many resources out there. There's lots of great books. Um, some that I can think of, that I have. Well, there's actually one that's good for people to understand trauma, and it's actually more of like a clinical kind of a clinical book, but I think anyone could read it. It's called The Body Keeps the Score, and it's not necessarily about addiction, but it does talk about just how our body deals and holds on to trauma. And I think that that's great for the family members to understand better, and people that are going through that have mental health challenges. So some of them are SAMHSA, which is Substance Abuse and Mental Health Service Administration. They, you can just Google that. They're open 24/7, 365 days a year. They offer free services. They not treatment services, but they can refer you to treatment centers. Um, Whether you're and any kind of help. So whether you're the family member and loved one of an alcoholic or addict, or the addict himself, the number for that is 1-800-662-HELP, or 4357. And basically they'll just give you referrals to locate support groups, facilities, stuff like that. Another one is called In the Rooms. They offer online meetings, again, for addicts and alcoholics. AA and NA is great. There's not just NA and AA. There's MA, Methamphetamine Anonymous. There's CA, Cocaine Amphetamine Anonymous. Anything. You can actually Google or just type in AA intergroups or NA intergroups, and it'll show you all the meetings all around the world. I mean, there's thousands and thousands of meetings, and right now with the COVID, you can have meetings with people in, different countries in Africa or in Europe or wherever, all over the world. Also, for people, if you're struggling with addiction, and you're at an airport and you're really battling, like not going to the bar or whatever, you can ask the concierge service to, on the intercom, say, "I need a friend of Bill W. at this location," who's the founder of AA. And anyone who's in AA or NA knows what that means, and they will literally come swarm. Oh, like, it gets me
Wow.
emotional. They'll come swarm you for encouragement and just like help you get through those cravings, because early recovery is rough. Um, I mean, recovery in general can be rough, but I think that that's so great, the community that they have. Al-Anon is really great for the family members. So, or CODA, Codependency Anonymous. Is that what it stands for? Yeah, it does. Um, which is a great resource also. Um, and some people don't like the 12 step, the AA or NA approach. There's Wellbriety, that's the Native American approach. There's Refuge Recovery, that's the Buddhist approach. Especially in this community, people have the recovery community. The biggest piece of them getting recovered is that they find a community that helps them. And then there's the suicide hotline, which is 1-800 273 8255. And I can send all that to you later, and you can put it in the link or
Yeah, yeah, that would be great. I love that. Those are amazing, amazing, helpful resources. And I'll link all of this stuff down below in the channel notes and in the description. So anybody who wants any of this information, it'll be there as well. Well, Kelsey, before I kind of close it out, is there any additional thoughts, anything that you'd want to share to listeners, to people who are watching, anything else that you'd want to share?
Yeah, actually, I do. I just want to share to anyone who's suffering, whether it's mental health, um, addiction, you're the family member of or a loved one of someone who's struggling with mental health challenges or addiction. I want everyone in this world to know that you are not damaged beyond repair. That's something that I tell to every single one of my patients, because it's very easy, for us to get so trapped in our mind and feel like we can't escape our own thoughts, which is such an isolating and scary feeling. Um, and what helps me with that is just knowing that I'm not damaged beyond repair, especially when we have a relationship with God. Like, He is constantly working day and night to heal and mend all of those wounds. He knows your wounds better than you do. And He will not stop until we are, with Him and healed. And we will be healed. I don't believe that we are always healing. I believe that there's certain areas of our life that we can be healed from. So that's what I have to say.
Amen. That's so encouraging, Kels. Thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing your story, sharing your resources. I know that this is just a passion of yours. It's been amazing to watch you grow in this passion and find this, what feels like just a dream come true of what God has been guiding you to for so many years. So I'm just amazed with you. You inspire me so much. I'm sure many people watching this are feeling very inspired and feeling helped, feeling hopeful. And I know that just that's who you are. So again, thank you so much for being on here. If anybody is watching, please be sure to subscribe to these channels so that you can hear more information about this. And again, all of the information that she shared will be listed down below if you are seeking help at all. So thank you so much for watching.
Of course. Thanks, Mad.